Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for waiting if you were waiting for the time. I was dealing with a couple of issues, but we are live now. I would like to have your feedback on the other hand to see if you are getting the sound correctly, the image correctly. Let me know. Say hello there. Hello, good afternoon. Where are you listening or watching from? It would be just great to know who is on the other end of the camera, on the other side of the camera. Okay, so while I wait for your feedback, I'm going to bring some notes here. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Celia Alves, and I am an Excel consultant and developer. I build business solutions, custom business solutions for companies to help them save time, save money, automate boring tasks, repetitive tasks in Excel. So we have Nuno. Hi, Nuno. Thank you for coming. And Claudia as well. Hello. Both are from Portugal. Thank you for joining me today. There's Mayra Peixe from Brazil. Hi, Mayra. Nice to see you here too. And okay, so in these live classes, I always try to bring you a topic related to a global, more wide topic of automating reports. I call it reports, but it can be it's a report in a wide sense as well. So imagine that in your company, you have some kind of procedure that involves importing data from somewhere, bringing data or having data in a spreadsheet, then making some kind of calculations with with that data, and possibly even then export those results in some kind of format. It could be a PDF, it could be another Excel file, a CSV file. It could be just a report, like a pivot table in that same spreadsheet. So that's what I've been calling reports. So it can be a very wide variety of situations. In these classes, I try to bring, what I bring here is one example or two, and we focus on finding a solution for that challenge. And then, of course, you may find connections to your work and possibly be able to apply what we see here, adapt it, because it's sometimes just one small difference in the requirements or in the initial conditions can make the problem quite different, and the solution quite different, and sometimes even more challenging to solve. So let's see, we have here Cassia. We have here Cassia Dudek from London. Nice to see you here. Thank you so much for coming. And we have Rupam as well. I don't understand why technical trainings have technical problems. However, great that we resumed. Thank you. Yes. Well, you see, every time I'm here in my office, and every time I go live, I have to change the way my monitors and everything is arranged, because the screen that I will share, where I will share my content, is one smaller screen that works best when I am broadcasting. If I try to share, if I share my big screen that I use for work, it will be so small, and then I will have problems with the zoom in and zoom out, and anyways. And sometimes moving things around every time I need to prepare for a live class has consequences in the connections. So that's what happened. Now you know what is going on in this side here. Okay. So I will bring my notes. I will bring your comments here to the side. Sometimes I forget to share my screen. I hope that that doesn't happen today, because if I get excited and I'm just looking at my work and the screen that I am sharing, I may not look at your comments. So I'll try to be very careful with keeping an eye on your comments, okay? So today, in today's class, and possibly tomorrow, it's possible that the third challenge that I brought for today, the three situations, and the third one is the most complicated one. It's possible that that third one, or part of it at least, I leave it for a second part, and we will deal with that tomorrow around the same time as today. So the situation today came about when I was having a discussion with other Excel professionals about being able to connect using Power Query, connecting to specific sheets in a file. So as we will see, the most common ways to connect to sheets using Power Query is when we connect to an external file. Or we will start even differently. We will start by connecting to a folder. And connection to a folder may seem more complicated for those of you who may not be so familiar with Power Query or are just taking your first steps. It may seem a little bit more confusing because when we connect to a folder, there's a number of helper queries that Power Query creates, and it seems awkward. But you will see that in this situation is in fact the easiest one, is to connect to a folder. So we will have the same set of data, and we have that data stored in three different ways. We will have the data stored in a folder, separate files. Then we will see what about if that data is in one file only, one Excel file only, and different sheets. And then we will see what about if those sheets are in the same file where I am working on. So that's the situation, and that's one of the things I think it's interesting to think about with this example, or these examples that I'm bringing today, is that the way we have the data stored, our data source, it can be the exact same data, but just because the way the data is stored is different, it can cause the solution or the process of bringing our data into our Excel file where we want to do the data analysis. It can make that process or the development of that process more or less challenging depending on the situation we need to deal with. So that's one of the takeaways I would like you to bring you today. Okay. I'm going to, before we start, I'm going to copy to the comments my Telegram channel. And this is a platform that where I can share files, share content, share thoughts. It works a little bit like WhatsApp, but with the convenience that the other members of the group won't be able to see your contact information. So in terms of privacy, I find it much better because we don't have to deal with that issue of sharing our contact with people we don't know. So the way it's set up, it's just a one-way communication channel. So it's a place where I share my files with you, share my comments, my insights with you. I also post some alerts every time some new content is live. So feel free to join, to check that, and if you'd like, join, because if you are interested in using the files that I use in this class, most of the files I share them there. Okay. I'm also sharing a link where you can subscribe to my newsletter if you are interested in that. That newsletter goes about one time per month. And in that newsletter, I share news about what I'm up to, the things that I've been developing. Sometimes they can be blog posts or videos, and participation in other events. And then I also share news about Excel. There's a lot of things, very interesting things going on with Excel. The Microsoft team, engineers in Excel are developing amazing things, and I try to bring you some of those novelties to you as well in that newsletter. Okay, so we have Marisa Matias. Hi, Marisa. She's my friend from Portugal. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome. Nice to see you here. Okay, so finally, before we start, just letting you know that this class is for you. So take good care, enjoy it as much as you can. Take advantage of it, practice. I don't know everything about Excel, but I do my best to bring you what I know and share with you, and so that both of us can grow and our skills. I learn a lot when I am teaching. So my request to you, if you think that the content is valuable to you, is that you share with other people, your colleagues at work, maybe it's your family or friends that you know that you think this content could be valuable to them. Um, Please do that, or consider that. Subscribe the channel if you think it's useful for you as well. Leave comments, leave your likes or dislikes according to your opinion. The last video that I published today was a small tutorial to answer to one question for one of the viewers of this channel. I do enjoy doing that, so feel free to leave your comments, leave your questions, and I'll do my best to attend your requests as much as possible. Okay. Okay, so enough talking. Let me share my screen with you and bring you some show you the files that I have here, the different situations I have here. If you have any comments, any questions, anything with the sound, let me know. My last video, the sound was not so good. I'm using a different machine than I used to, just temporarily. So I'm not sure if that's what's making the difference or what. Okay, sharing my screen here. So you should be able to see my files. So first situation is we have files, different files, one per store inside a folder. So from an external file, I want to connect to this folder, and regardless of how many files I have in there, I want to import all the data. We will take, I can open one of these, let's see, this one maybe, one of the files and show you what the content is. Okay, so a very small quantity of data. Each file will have the 4 rows for different kinds of products, and then it can have more or less columns. These should be maybe the vendors and the quantity sold of each one of these products. Each file is for one location. We have some empty cells somewhere, and in this case we have 4 columns, but other locations can have more or less columns. Okay. Example number 2 will be that all the files, all the stores will be in just one file, and we have the data separate in different sheets. The exact same data, just different sheets. This one is selected there. Okay. The other situation then at the end is that I have a file with the same data that I just showed you, but I also have other sheets, and not only that, so I have the 4 sheets for different locations, and then I have another sheet here called lists with some content that it's not part of my data to analyze, and I am interested in bringing just the store, just the data from the stores sheets into this other sheet, so within the same file. Okay, and please note that these are not tables, Excel tables. just sheets. And in these sheets, I may be able to have more columns or less columns. In fact, I think I will delete these extra rows at in the end because it simplifies our problem. Okay. In fact, let me check my last file here. Oh, not this one. Also data. Yeah, probably that one. Yeah. So this is the solution. In the end, is the idea is to build something like this, like a pivot table with our data. Okay. And yes, I ended up deleting those extra rows. So in all the situations we have the table there in starting in column in cell A1. We will check that. I started differently, but then when I was preparing the class, I ended up just simplifying that way. Okay, so let's start with the first example, files in a folder. This is, to all of you who are interested in learning about Power Query, is one fundamental procedure that you need to learn how to do, okay? So we have a file there, and I have this one here is the one that I ended up building. Let's try start a new file here. And I'm going to say sales, all stores, and I'm going to put here live so that we know that this is the file we are working on on the live class. Okay. This is an empty file, Excel file. And we are interested in connecting to that folder. I'm going to share my, put my full spreadsheet here, occupying the entire screen. Okay, let's start from anywhere here. So we want to connect to a folder. So we come to the data tab there, get data, and then first we need to choose from file. Okay, and then here to the bottom we have from folder. Data, get data from file, from folder. We need to wait a little bit for Power Query to load. And this is asking me, okay, so where's your folder? Just easier maybe to come here and copy this path. So Control C, escape to get out of there. And in here, instead of having to look through all my folders and subfolders, I just paste, enter, so I'm there. Okay. So if we go back, this is where we started, and then this is my folder to where I want to point to. I click open. And it brings me to this dialog box here that shows me the different files in that folder. We go transform data. And you may be familiar that this column here that says content, if we click not in the word binary, but if we click inside a cell, not on top of the word, we can see that it has the different files there, right? So we can try to, and usually this is one way of doing, the way we do when we are connecting to a folder is to, maybe we can first eliminate other columns. We can select these two and remove other columns, just to keep the name of the file in case we need it. And one thing that I didn't mention is that the name of the store is not in our data anywhere. So it's in the name of the sheets or in the name of the files in this case, but not inside. So it's good to keep this column and make use of it later. Okay, so here in the content, we can click that button to expand the content and see what happens. Okay, it's asking me, when we connect to a folder with Power Query, it asks us, okay, explain me just with one file of that folder what you want me to do with the data inside the file. And once I understand what you want me to do with just one file, I'll go ahead and I'll create some processes here of my own that will allow me to repeat the process with the other files in the folder. So what I want, it says I can use the first file. That's fine. That's Calgary file. Any file. The first one is good as example, as sample file. And in that file, I want to look into sheet number 1. We can see the data in there, and we can say, okay. So all the files in this case have the same number, have only one sheet, and the sheet name is the same for all the files. If that was not the case, then we would have to do a little trick here with the M code, so that Excel can look at the same file without getting messed up with different names. So here we go. We just click one or two buttons. We can see refresh there. And Power Query created not only several steps here in this query that it's calling stores data. So automatically it shows to name the query after the name of the folder, which is fine. We can leave it like that. But also here, if you don't see this on your case, you can just click here. In this side of the screen, we have the different queries. So we started one query only. This was a one blank file that we just started, and Power Query already created several queries here. We are building one query, and Power Query went ahead and created all these queries. This happens, it says here, helper queries. This happens when we are connecting to a folder. And what Power Query does, it creates parameters here. This parameter is to define, okay, so what's the file you want me to use as example? That file is in here, and then there's a transform file function and a transform sample file query. This function will look at all the steps that we do here. So if we do any steps here, the function records those, and then this function will be used by the main query. Okay, so if it is confusing, if you are starting with Power Query, do not worry. Just know with the time you will learn how to interpret these helper queries here, but know that they will always be there when you are connecting to an Excel folder, an external folder with files. Okay. All these steps here are we created this one, indicating the source. There's the path to my files. I created this one as well when I said remove other columns and keep just these two. And then Power Query created these automatically. In here, we can see, if we click on the cell not on top of the word table, we can see each one of the little tables inside with data inside each sheet. And Power Query was smart enough already to recognize headers, despite the fact that we don't have Excel tables there. And how did it do that? If we go here to the transform sample file, let's refresh this. We can see that inside this query, and this is a query that Power Query is using to understand what to do with each file, it has different steps here as well. So it has one with the source that points to the parameter 1 file, which is the first file in the folder. And then it has one navigation step that points to sheet 1 in that file, sample file. And then automatically Power Query already decided to promote headers, meaning in here, the first row where we have these headers is not recognized as column headers, but then with this step, the first row is promoted to headers, meaning that the values there will be used as column titles. Let's call it like that, or column headers. Okay, so that's why when we come to here to our main query, when we invoke the custom function 1, which is this one, it generates one table for each one of the files, and each one of these tables is the result of applying the steps in this transform sample file to each one of the files in that folder. Okay, so I hope this helps those who are starting new with Power Query. And then Power Query already went ahead and said, oh, I don't need the other columns, I just need this one. And then it went and said, expand it. Let's expand the table. Let's expand each one of these tables, expand this column. And we got this result. Let me close here to have more room. We got this result. So we have the product names repeated here. And then we have the names there at the top, but I mean, this is not correct. And then we have null, null, null. This does not sound good because the names are different from file to file, and I only have 3 names here. So this is not looking good. Okay. And then it applied the change type step here. We don't need that for now. Let's do that. Let's remove that. And let's see what we can do here. Let's see if there are any questions there for now, or any comments. Not that I see. So let's continue. If you have any questions or comments, let's see. So you see that in this case, the result is not giving us what we need. So let's go back here. If we, in this step here, if I promote the headers, then it's assuming that all the files have the same headers, but the names from different vendors, for the different vendors, are different from column to column. So I cannot, from file to file, I cannot pass from this step and apply and then continue to the main query from here, because not all the files will have the same headers. Okay. So let's do the following. In here, we can in fact, let's try this. Use first row as headers. So note that I am working on the transform sample file. Okay. And then I can do the following. Select the product column that will be always the product column will exist in all the queries. Right click and say unpivot other columns. Okay. I need to delete this change step here, because this change step has Freddy, Emiliano, Asher. So these particular names are coded there. And we don't want that because the other files won't have those names. So this instruction recorded in the M code won't be recognized properly. So I'm going to delete that. Another good point to delete change type here is that unless we really need it, we should not do that in the transform sample file, because some of those types won't pass to the main query. We would have to repeat the change data type anyways. So now, okay, I have 3 columns. The first one, I can call it column vendor name, or just vendor. And the second column will be the quantity sold. Okay. So let's go to the main query again. Let's click here and see if this now helped. Well, what do you see here? Now everything is much better organized. We have the different vendors, the different products, and the quantities for each product that each vendor sold. And notice I can maybe do this Control Shift Plus so that we have a little bit bigger here. Let me know if you have problems with if the zoom, the size is too small, okay? Now we can see that we have Fred, Emiliano, Asher as in the first file, but then I have other names, and those names come other files. There's one inconvenience here is that at some point I had the file names that would give me the names of the stores, but they disappeared. They disappeared, and I really wanted them because not only I want to know the quantities sold by each one of the vendors, but I also want to know in general, each one of the locations or stores, what is the data, and now I lost that information. Okay, so let's go back. We have the source step. We have the names in there. Here we still have the names of the file names. Here we still have them. And then here in this automatic step that Power Query did for us said, oh, remove all the other columns except the transform file. Table select columns, that's the formula there. Okay, so that's when the names of the files disappeared. So if we come here to this gear wheel, we can select the columns we want to keep. And the column that had the name of the file was this column here. Okay, so that's good. Although I still have this .xls xxlsx, the name is extension, the file. So let's take care of that. It could be either here or here. It doesn't matter. We can do maybe now at the last step. I can say, let's transform this column so that it extracts the text that comes before this .xlsx. Okay, we can come to, since I don't want to repeat a new column, have a new column, and then having to delete this one. If I wanted that, I would use the add column. But since I want to just replace this column with that one that I want to build, I will use transform tab. So from here, I'll go extract the text before the limiter. I could use dot, but just in case some file has a dot there, we can be more specific and say .xlsx, and I want to extract everything before that. Okay, so there we go. Now we have the names of the stores. We are assuming that all the files are named correctly and the way we need. So let's assume that for now. And so now we have all the information we need. We are ready to load our data to the file. Okay, so we can come to home, close and load to. I just have this sheet here. So I want to load to an existing. In fact, let's try, instead of loading as a table, I want to load this as a pivot table report. I'm going to place the report there. Okay. And now we have our fields here, and we can build our pivot table immediately after this. So for example, I can have, oh, I forgot to name, let's do this before. Yeah, let's do this before we load our pivot table, because I wanted to rename the column name to store. So let's do that. Data, queries and connections. Double click here to edit the query. And before we load here, this column, and I forgot also to change the data types. So let's do that. Here, let's do store. And product is text. The store already is recognized as text. The vendor is also text, and the quantity needs to be a whole number or decimal number. Let's leave it as a whole number. If we didn't do that, in fact, our pivot table wouldn't work, wouldn't be able to calculate, because it cannot sum. It needs to know that we have a number to be able to calculate. So close and load. It's very important to define the data types at the end, and I was almost forgetting about that. So if I click here, now I have two tabs here on the right side. If I go to this one, I am on the pivot table tab. If I go there, I am on the queries and connections tab. It's quite a nice addition there. Okay, so now I have store. Good. So I can, for example, have stores and then have the vendors inside each store, and then or maybe have, yeah, and then we can put, for example, products across the columns and the quantity there in the values. There we go. Nice report. And the good thing about it is that if this is what we wanted, it's done. And if you need to repeat this every month, well, or every week or every day, it doesn't matter. You just need to make sure to have your files in that folder. That's it, right? So now, depending on the situation, you may need to move files out of there and then bring files again, or you need to find a way of pointing to a different folder. There's classes where I speak about that. Or you maybe just have to add your, change your data in the original files that we already are using. Maybe the numbers change, you just need to change the data there. So that can be different scenarios where this same solution could be applied to, and there could be different adjustments that might need to be done depending on how the little details of the process are. Okay, but we have our pivot table here. We could here in the pivot table, in the design, we can change the report layout to use the tabular form, and in this way, we have one column for store and one column for vendor. So there's other things that we could work here in our pivot table. I like to also uncheck the grid lines here, so it's a much better, a much cleaner view. And of course, there we could rearrange our pivot table a different way if we wanted to, but our main purpose to collect the data is done. Okay, so I'm going to save this file. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you learned anything new so far. So Rupam says, life looks so simple with Power Query. Exactly. Can you imagine doing this before Power Query? We had to use VBA probably, or other methods like that, and it was so much more difficult and challenging, and much more work, more time invested. So I agree with you. Okay, so are you ready for second example? Let me do this. I hope this was valuable. If it was valuable, let me know. Have you learned something already? Some of you, I know you are pros already. So connecting to a folder is not new for you. But if it was new for you, for any of you, let me know, okay? Because I'm explaining everything in detail for you who are new to Power Query. Because who knows Power Query already, they don't need my classes so much, okay? So going back to my folder, I'm going to share my screen here again. Okay, so going back now, let's go and make a connection to an external file. So remember, we have a file. I'm going to explain again very quickly. We have one file, and each sheet has the data. Let's do that. And again, note that all the sets of data start in cell A1. So we have, in this case, 4 sheets there. I didn't do a test for the previous example. We could add a new file and just refreshing, if I put a new file in the folder, refreshing, I will get the data there. In fact, let's do that just to conclude. So here we have, each sheet has a set of data. We have 4 sheets. Okay. Let me go back here just very quickly to this example. If in this folder I create a new file, again, this is for those of you who are new to Power Query. Let's say I put here the city Vancouver. Okay. Just going to change the names there so that we know, for example, let's call this Anna and this Peter, and I'm going to delete the other columns, and I'm going to put here 2 in all the products for both, just so that we know, we can identify the data. Save and close. So the advantage, like I was saying before, the work is done. I don't need to do anything else. I just need to refresh my query. It's not opening. Let's do it again. And so imagine the next month I have an extra file in my folder. Right click, refresh. Wait a couple of seconds. Connecting to data source, it says here at the bottom. Usually it's quicker than this. For some reason it's taking its time, maybe because of the streaming. Okay, so you see, there we go. Now we have Vancouver with 2 vendors, 2 for all the products. The totals are calculated, and that's it. So that's the best part, is to see the refreshing, to test the refreshing, and I was forgetting about that. That's where the magic happens, right? Okay, so example number 2, we have that file, different sheets. These other sheets here are from my previous experiments. I'm going to create a new file, external file. Or let me see. Yeah, I think that one has work done. So let me new Excel here, sales, all stores, and then let's put live here. Okay, again, the exercise files, so the data files, I can put that available, make that available on the Telegram channel. Feel free to check after class. Sometime later, they will be there. Okay. So blank page, blank file, and I want to connect to that external file. Let me bring my full screen here. It says, Myra page here, it says, everything I learned from you is new for me. Don't tell me that. That's great to hear that I'm teaching something. That's all the whole purpose, right? If I was not teaching, then you wouldn't have to spend your time listening to these classes. You could apply it to something else that you want to learn. Amazing so far. Thank you, Rupam. Very kind of you. So, okay, now we want to connect to an external file. We go to the same, starts the same way. We come to the data tab, get data from file, from a workbook this time, not from a folder, okay? And you will see that these will have a little bit of more challenges, although it seems that it should be easier to, let me see if I still have the, yeah, I still have my path there. I was saying it should be easier to, doesn't let me, oh, because I need to connect to a file. Okay, no, what I'm doing, I'm distracted, so let me do again. Data, get data from file, from workbook. That's where I want to put In fact, I don't want it there. I want it here. Come on. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's the comma there. Okay. So this folder in external file, and then in here stores data. Okay. I was saying if we think about it, we could think, well, it should be easier to connect to one file only instead of one folder. And in some circumstances, it is easier. In this particular situation, because of how our data is set up, and you may have thought already that data is not in a tabular format layout. It's not in a tabular layout. We should have one column with the product, one column with the vendor name, and one product with the quantity sold. But instead of that, we have the vendor names across on top of the columns, and that's what creates the challenge here. Okay, so I'm connecting to a file, and it says, okay, here's the content of your file. In this case, it only shows me different sheets. It could show me named ranges, tables, but in this case, the file doesn't have that. If I try to do this, select multiple items, and then do this, and then transform data there from there, or load, this will create me 4 different queries, one per sheet. I don't want that, because I want them all combined, and I want this flexible enough so that the next time, if I have 5 sheets instead of 4, everything works still without me having to modify the work that I did before. So taking that into consideration, let's click here in that folder icon, okay, and select transform data. And this will bring us to a new dialog box now, or in fact, to the Power Query editor. Note that we only have one step, and in here we have Excel workbook, because we are connecting to an Excel workbook, and then we have file contents. Okay, so first, because this is inside, it means it's applied first. So we have a path that points to a file, Excel file, and then we have file contents, meaning look at the contents of this file, and then since this is an Excel file, then use the function Excel workbook, and this function has 2 parameters here that we will see in a minute what they do. Okay, I have different sheets here. In this case, I don't have to filter anything because I don't have extra elements. I could have the need of saying, let's say I had an extra sheet there that I didn't want, or I had a table or something that would appear in this column, then we should filter by sheet and then select the sheets we want. But in this case, let's stay with what is already simple, okay? So we can try from here, since we have our data in this column, and let me maybe try to make this bigger because this will be important. Each cell here has a table, and the table shows me a preview. If I click, it shows me a preview of the data in each file. Note that the headers are not, that step that we saw before, promote first row as headers, is not happening here, right? So all the files have column 1, 2, 3, 4, column 1, 2, 3, 4 there. This one, this goes to up to 6, depending on the file, the sheet. Okay. What happens? I have an expand button here. What happens if I expand this? Well, first thing that we can already foresee here is that we have names of columns 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 already being hard-coded here. They will be hard-coded here. You see here this at the top? This can be a problem in the future because my data in the future maybe can have up to column 10, and those columns won't be brought. If one sheet has more than 6 columns, those columns won't be brought here. So, and not only that, but if we look at the data, we see that the way the data was combined, it's not very friendly now to try to put this all together, because I have here, let's see, I have here one row with the names of the vendors, and then it stops here, and then so I would have to unstack this, and we can think of that challenge. How would we do to unstack this data like that, to put it in a tabular layout? Won't be the challenge that we will do today, because we will go a different way. So this is not giving us a nice result. I deleted that step. And let's go back. I want to show you something about this formula here. Let me just bring here my my notes. Just a second there. So I removed that step. And one thing that I can do, even before I show you that function, is to try the table.combine. Table.combine, we see that we have different tables here. When we go table.combine, it does a similar thing that we were getting before. If I come here and create a custom step and do table.combine of the previous, the source, but I don't want the source. I want just one column from the source, and it's the column data that has the tables. So I enter that column in between square brackets. So I'm saying this column has several tables, combine those tables. If I do that, oh, Rabble, it's not Rabble, it's table. I am so bad at typing. Okay, we get a similar result as before. Not so good. Okay, so you see already why I was saying that connecting to one unique external Excel file in this particular situation, the way we have our data, is being more challenging than connecting to a folder. Because when I was connecting to a folder, I had those helper columns, and I could manipulate the data on each coming from each particular file using that helper query that Power Query creates, and I could make it put it in a tabular layout before I combine everything, but I don't have that here. Okay, so it would be nice if each column, column in each sheet was recognized as the first row in there was recognized as column headers. This would be better, because the Lucille column from the first file would not be combined with the Annie column or the Freddie column from other files. Every time we would have a different column name when doing table.combine, different column names go separate. They are not combined together. And we will see that. Let me show you. Let me bring here my, and I'm going to put this link here, there as well in the comments. And I'm going to share that later in the Telegram channel as well. So if we go, let's bring up the one browser here. And if we copy this link there, we come to the Excel workbook. Why Excel workbook? Excel workbook is the function here. The function file contents is not using any extra parameters besides the path, but the function here, Excel.workbook, has two parameters here. And if we go to the Microsoft Docs website and look for, we are inside the Power Query M functions, assessing data functions, and a particular page for the Excel workbook function. Maybe bring this up. Let's see if I can make it bigger. Here it says that we have these parameters, and we have here workbook as binary, optional use headers as any, and optional delay data types as nullable. Yeah, this can be an awkward language, but we can try to understand this. And in here, it says that the first parameter can be null or a logical true false value, indicating whether the first row of each return table should be treated as a header. So this sounds like what I wanted, what I needed for this particular situation. Okay, and then the data types can be null or then it can be true false, indicating whether or not we want the columns of each return table to be left untyped, meaning the data types won't be defined, and the default is false. Okay, so let's go back here. We have a null here, and we have a true there. Okay, when we go here, it says we have the data types not defined, and we have and the headers are not recognized. So what happens if I come and say true here? Meaning this parameter is to get the column headers identified. Let's change that. Let's go to the end and press enter. Okay, now let's move to the next step and look the difference. Let's see. So now, before we had column 1, column 2, column 3, columns 5 up to 6, and all the names below, now I have one column for each vendor. And of course, the first few rows belong to these vendors that are from the first row, from the first sheet up to maybe Walter. And then it comes the next sheet with the next set of people, Annie, Darwin, etc. They are in this set of data here, this set of data here. And then to the right, we have nulls, nulls, nulls at the top, and then another piece of content starts here. Okay. So this is looking better now, because now I have one column for each vendor. Remember that we had one column for each vendor when we had separate files in the folder, one file for each store. So now I can come here and do pivot other columns, and pivot columns, other columns. And again, this only depends on the column product. The other names are not involved, which is good, because the next time we can maybe have different vendor names. And now here we can define our type, it's text. The attribute column, I can call it vendor. And the value column, I can say it's quantity. And I can say that this is a whole number. And now we are ready to go back to our file and load our data. Close, close, and load too. And I want to ask you, what is that we are missing in this case from the previous example? So I'm going to choose as pivot table report. Okay. And I'm going to say, I want the products in the columns, I want the vendors in the rows, and I want the quantity here. So we have a similar pivot table as before, but something is missing here. Let me know there in the comments, what is that we are missing from the considering the previous example. Let's see if someone is answering. Okay. No answer so far. I know there's a little bit of delay, so I'll wait a little bit longer. We have, I must pay more attention to the syntax of the function. Exactly. We do not learn that from the beginning, but if we keep paying attention to what the M code gives us, and if we are curious enough and have the time to go and look what the other parameters are in the documentation, maybe we will learn new solutions. And sometimes the documentation is not very helpful because Microsoft is still building those pages. Some of the functions have very, very limited information, but sometimes there's valuable information there. So that's an advice for you, is to keep an eye on the formula bar and to keep an eye on the functions that we get and the parameters, and explore that a little bit. Okay. So that's our challenge number 2. And we are past the hour now, so I'm going to leave you with a challenge for tomorrow if you want to join me tomorrow. And that challenge is, think of how would this think of 2 things. And I didn't have, okay, I have an answer now from Claudia. The name or place of the store is missing, right? Exactly. So this process, and there's nothing here. If we go back to our query here, let me maybe put this up. In our process here, we connect to a file. We have the file names in there, right? We have the sheet names in there. When we combine the tables from the previous step, the name of the column, the column name here disappears, and all the other columns disappear. We only get the combination of each one of the tables that we have there, and then we move on from there. So it disappears. I want to challenge you to find a solution to how do we keep this name in there and combine it with the tables, with the data that comes from each one of the tables, so that we have everything together in the end and are able to load our data and have the name of the store here available as well. I'll give you the solution tomorrow. I have that solution prepared, and I also will show you the other third example where our data is in separate sheets, exactly as in this case, the same data, same sheets, but the difference is that they are not on an external file. They are inside the same file where I am building my queries. Let me bring here. Okay. So if you have time and if you are curious, try to find that, to solve that problem by yourself. I do challenge you to do that. I'm going to put the exercise files, including the file for the third challenge, in the Telegram channel. Feel free to check and use those files. And we'll meet you tomorrow around the same time, 5:30 Eastern time, and we'll go through those 2 challenges. They are, so we will give you a tip. I will use a function, a custom function. We will have to use a little bit of M code to get the location name. Okay. Let me know if there are any final comments or questions. Otherwise, we will finish this for today, and I'm glad to join you tomorrow again for another class and that other solution. It will be fun. I do enjoy those extra challenges when it involves us to work with the M code. And if you are just starting with Power Query, do not despair if this seems complicated to you, because it's like learning a new language when we go to a new country. You start with small words and sentences later, and then we are able to write a story at the end. Okay. Just highlighting the fact that this type of work, for all of you who work with Excel, if you have to repeat the same type of task related to importation of data, in this case of our class today, it's about importing data. It's very important that you learn how to put a tool that you already have at your disposal. Power Query is inside Excel. You have Excel. You don't have to pay more for that. You don't have to install anything extra. You just have to learn how to use the tools and the features that you already have available. This will make your life easier. It will make your team lives easier. So I hope this is helpful for you. Okay, so we have Maria Page saying thank you. We have Rupon. Thank you as well. No, thank you, I say to all of you for being here. And if you can join me in the next class, I will be glad to share the next few steps. Enjoy your night, your evening, your morning, depending on where you are, and have a good night and see you soon. We'll see you in the next class. Bye now.